The gospel is good news. Good news. Those two words, good news, are mentioned at least twice in this text before us this morning. And I want to talk about the good news. But first I want to get real and say, if there is good news, then there must be bad news too. At first I want to talk about the bad news. Do you know what the bad news is? I'll tell you what the bad news is. The bad news is this: if I am not satisfied with love alone, then I won't ever be truly satisfied with anything. That's the bad news. Can I put that bad news on you? Are you feeling sort of hearty for Lent? I want to put it on you. If you are not, here's the bad news. If you are not satisfied with love alone, then the bad news is you won't ever be truly satisfied with anything. Oh, sure, you'll have passing moments. You may even have extended stretches of satisfaction with this or that. But abiding, sustained happiness only comes from touching the depth of love that God has planted inside your chest, inside your actual flesh and blood body. Love alone can deliver the goods. The bad news, it gets a little worse. The bad news is that most of us, I wonder if you're in this crowd referred to as most of us. The bad news is that most of us are walking around afflicted with a pretty terrible disease. This dis-ease that most of us have is the illusory sense that when we get what we want, we'll be happy. Is anybody walking around with that disease? This disease that has got me thinking that I'll be happy when or if, then fill in the blank. When she finally does X, when he finally does Y, when we finally get. You put your thing in there, baby. We'll be happy. All the happy, it gets worse. All the happiness of getting what I want is like cotton candy. Come on, be honest. It is, isn't it? When was the last time you had cotton candy? The happiness of getting what I want is like cotton candy. It's sweet for a moment. I mean, really sweet. It lights up my taste buds and sends a sugary rush all over my body, touching every cell in my body with this high. But then it's gone. Boy, then you come back down, don't you? And what do you want when you come back down? This is characteristic of the disease. All I want is more. Give me more. The really bad news about the bad news, boy, it's Lent, isn't it? The really bad news about the bad news is that sometimes I get what I want. And I get this cotton candy rush of delight, which only reinforces the false belief that when I get what I want, I'll be happy. Does anybody here know what I'm talking about? So I've noticed lately, I don't know if y'all have noticed this. Does anyone aware of like a culture around us? Y'all probably are real pious folks, just kind of in your meditation selves. But I've noticed in the culture around us, like the culture in which we live and move and have our being, the bad news seems to be on display every day in these poor people who are running for public office in our culture. Bless their hearts. Have y'all seen this on the news? Y'all probably don't watch the news. Y'all are better than I am. But if you watch the news, now I don't know these folks personally. I don't, so I could be totally wrong. But if you look at the news, what you see is that these folks who are running for all these things, they want to win. And they seem to think that they're going to be happy if they win. They hadn't heard the bad news that winning doesn't make you happy. Now, I'm not up here to throw stones. And I actually fundamentally don't believe in demonizing other folks. And I told y'all last week that I gave up being judgmental for Lent. No, I'm actually dazzled by these people and their sincerity. No, because I think they sincerely believe that the disease in them is not a disease. And so what I really think, I mean this, I know I'm a silly person, but I really mean this. They need our sympathy, these folks, and our prayers. No, I don't throw stones at them because I am them. I get it. They need our prayers because they're drinking the bad news like Kool-Aid. And I get that. You know what I mean? They don't seem to know what followers of Jesus Christ want to know, which is that winning is yet another passing fancy, and it won't do the trick to quiet the demons inside. See the bad news? Before we talk about the good news, I just want to say a couple things about the bad news. The bad news is that whatever you think is going to make you happy is not going to make you happy for very long. Are we together on the bad news? Y'all want to talk about the good news? She said, yes, please, God. No, the good news is this, y'all. Now, you got to listen to this because it's really good news. It'll light you up, literally. The good news is that you have a spark of the divine. Let me put it a different way. The good news is you got a piece of God. A piece of God inside your body, burning like a fiery furnace of love inside your body right this second. And this piece of God that is in you is your source and your salvation. Now here's where the really, really good news starts. That same spark of God's grandeur in love is animating your neighbor to life right this second. Which means, should you so choose to reach out and touch your neighbor right this second, you would be hooked up to the current of God's animating love coursing through his or her body right this second. And you might even, I don't know, but you might even feel a little jolt like, oh my, God's love is sitting in the pew right next to me. The good news, look at them touching each other. The good news, come on, reach out to somebody and see they're reaching out for you too. The good news is that love, baby, that love is what you're actually after. That's what you're hungry for. The architect of your heart has made your heart in such a way that only love will do the trick to fill the space inside. The love that is the source of your very life. Is always available to you. Just play it like a song. It's right there. You just can't hear it until you slow down. But it's always available to you, and you can touch it, you can feel it, you can breathe it. If you'll dare to stop. If you'll dare to let go. If you'll dare to be still. In the silence, should you dare to go inside your own body. Now I know about the disease, right? So I know that it's actually a lot easier and it's instantly gratifying to just get on your phone and buy something. Amazon, I'm going to have it at your house this afternoon. But hold on now. I know it's a little distracting, but we're together. It's okay. Reaching for the love that is animating you in the silence, and then discovering that love is reaching out for you. This is the good news. You are made of love, for love, by love, and you can live on love. Let me put it this way. Some years ago, I knew a woman who nearly took her own life when she was a young mother. She stood one day on a high place all by herself, and she ran in her head through the steps she would take to end her suffering. And just as this woman, are you with me? Just as this woman was about to jump, a total stranger appeared by her side. And with angelic calm, this total stranger said to the young woman, "Ma'am, don't be afraid. I won't stop you. But I want to ask you to do one thing for me. Think this through. Think what you're about to do all the way through." And then the stranger, she said he just disappeared. And when he did, the woman stepped back from the edge of the ledge in her own despair. And she went on home. And 6 decades later, that young woman was an old woman nearing the end of a long, full life. A life full of ups and downs and in-betweens, celebrations and deep sorrows, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And in all the many years, she'd spent a lot of time since that day grasping, she said, grasping at things to try to get solid hold on happiness. She became active in her church over the decades. She became active in politics over the course of her life. This woman made a lot of money and achieved a certain level of status. But try as she might, she told me, sustained happiness always seemed to slip through her fingers like sand, just as she thought she had a good grip. And then one day, everything changed. One late afternoon, her adult son came into the sunroom of her home where she sat. It was a quiet moment. She was sitting in the room looking out the back window, watching her dogs play in the backyard. It was her birthday. She was 85 years old. The party her family had thrown was over, and they were all in the kitchen cleaning up. Her son knocked on the threshold of the sunroom space lightly and said, "Mom, can we talk?" She looked up at her boy, now a man, and said, "Sure, honey, what's on your mind?" And her son stepped into the room, and he said, "Mom, I don't know how to say it, so I'll just come out with it. Your granddaughter is really struggling, Mom. She's really struggling." "Oh, no," the woman said. "Well, what's wrong? Come, sit, tell me." And her son stood. "Mom, she's gay, and she's afraid to tell you. It's eating her up. She wants to, but it's eating her up because she thinks she has to be a certain way for you to accept her. And so she's scared." And the woman said, "What? Why? Why does she feel this way about me?" Her son said, "Mom, I just want to tell you what... Mom, she's afraid to talk to you about this because you go to church. And Mom, she's afraid of your politics and your beliefs, and she's afraid that they tell you that she's bad news. And Mom, this is not your fault, Mom. What I'm about to say," the man said, "is not your fault, Mom. It's not your fault. But she's talked about taking her own life. And Mom, we need help." And the woman said, "Oh, no. Son, no, 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 you send her into me. She said, will you please see if she'll talk to me? And so we went to the kitchen. And after just a little while, the woman's granddaughter appeared in the doorway. She stepped into the room timidly with her eyes cast down to the floor. And her grandmother said, darling, come here, honey, come here. And she moved towards her grandmother, and she allowed her grandmother to take her hand in her own. And her grandmother said, honey, you don't have to look at me, but I want you to listen to me, because I have something to say to you. She said, darling child, you are my heartbeat. And I don't care if you're bright pink, purple, or green. I love you, and I will always love you, and I want you to be happy. And the girl laughed a little bit, because only a grandmother would say, I don't care if you're bright pink, purple, or green when you come out. And a tear rolled down her cheek. And the grandmother continued, my politics at this point, darling, are just a long-held bad habit. And I'll get rid of them for you. And my church, sweetheart, baby, don't believe everything you hear about church folks. Because my church, the people at my church, she said, believes you are such very good news. And I do too. And you never have to be afraid of what I think, because I don't think anything anymore. That's what this old woman said, y'all. I don't think anything anymore. All I do is love. And I love you as is, just as you are, like God made you. And when the woman told me, when she told me that story, this old woman said that in that moment, she could feel inside her body the good news, the fire of God's love burning inside of her as her source and her ground, and as a place from which she could live and proceed into her own life. And she said to me, Hendree, here's the deal. I'm an old woman, and my goal in life is that my granddaughter live. That's my work now, that she know that she is loved. And that she lives in my love. And when she told me that, I thought about the current, the electricity, the current of God's love that runs like an unbroken, benevolent thread through all of us. And how when we reach out, we are living in God's love. Y'all, that's the good news. It undoes all the bad news. That's the good news. So I bid you spread it. Spread it far and wide. Don't ever stop spreading the good news. Far and wide. Amen.